Pull up in motorcades, I got a show today. It's all I'm trying to do, hustle and motivate. Choppers a throwaway, hustle the overweight. That's why they follow me, They think I know the way, 'cause I took control of things.
All right, welcome to Hustle Codes Podcast, where we provide a platform for successful entrepreneurs to tell their inspiring stories, as well as reveal to us for the first time secret codes on how they made it to the top. I'm your host, Provide, and it's time to hustle. Before we introduce our special guest, you can visit us at islandnavla.com. Use the promo code HC15 and you'll receive 15% off your entire purchase. We just released our collab with Champion, as well as our Hustle Codes merch. So make sure you stop by the website and check us out. Subscribe to the link below, whether you're on YouTube or iTunes, whatever platform. We definitely need your subscription, as well as comments and your support. So without further ado, I want to introduce my special guest today. He is considered a real estate mogul within Southern California, specifically within the Orange County area in commercial real estate. We'll talk deeply about that. He's also a former NFL player, played with the Niners as well as with the Bills. He is the founder of the Lott Trophy Award, and if you don't know anything about that, it's a prestigious college award for Division I football athletes. Hopefully my son wins that one day. And last but surely not least, over his 20-year tenure within the commercial real estate market, he has produced over $1 billion in real estate transactions. So without further ado, my guy, the man, the myth, the legend, the SC alumni, and I won't hold that against him, Mr. Mike Salmon. Thank you for having the song coming on,
That's
bro.
one hell of an intro, Bob. Thank you.
So before we get to Big Mike's story, here's a little gift from the Hustle Codes Podcast. A little workout tee, you know what I mean? So check that out. Make sure you grab yours as well. So with that being said, Mike, we have a great relationship. I consider you as a business mentor of mine. Oh, as you know, I always pick your brain about business and stuff, and we'll talk more about Earth Labs or where we're meeting at today. So with that being said, we like to start from the beginning. Where did you grow up at? Was it Orange County? I know, you know what I mean? But what was life like in you know, wherever you grew up at? What were you influenced by, and how did you guys actually migrate to California and start life here?
Yeah, so I grew up, I was born in St. Mary's Hospital up in Long Beach. I'm a Long Beach guy. My parents split up when I was about, I think, 7 or 8 years old, and then, went on this journey of Texas. I went to, my mom moved us to Wichita Falls, Texas, then Fort Worth, always chasing another job, then went down to Houston, Texas for a few years, and then eventually moved out with my dad out in Arizona. And so I kind of went all through junior high and high school out in Arizona after the Long Beach, Texas ride, and then went to USC, got a scholarship to play football and baseball at USC, and then went on to play, for the 49ers, Buffalo Bills, played some NFL Europe, and then got done with that and moved down to Orange County. My brother was playing for the Angels. I was his bat boy growing up all through, and he was having an incredible career. And I said, you know what, I really want to watch this guy's career finish up. So I've been in Orange County ever since.
So let's rewind, because you literally went through the whole story.
I did
30 seconds, right?
Sorry.
Mike is a busy man. You trying to end this real quick. So let's go back to Texas, okay? Yeah. So you said junior high and high school in Texas and Arizona. What was life like there? What was the going from Long Beach to there? Was there a culture shock? Was it totally different? What was life like?
Well, it was. I had a good childhood in general, but we had our challenges big time, and I learned a lot from the challenges that were dealt. I remember back in the day, I grew up on the beach in Long Beach down there, and I was wearing OP Ocean Pacific back in the day, right? Well, then I moved to Texas. And it was crazy because it was culture shock. Everything I owned was Vans and California gear, and now I'm all with these redneck hillbillies in Wichita Falls, Texas, and my nickname was Opie, of the Andy Griffith Show, which drove me nuts. And I didn't. So then I wanted to change all my clothing, but we didn't have any money. And so everybody was calling me Opie. That was this little redheaded dude on the Andy Griffith Show growing up. And so kind of had a major culture shock, wanted to put the pound down on a few boys back in those days. And then I had another culture shock. My mom, she moved us into these brand new apartments in Houston, and they hadn't been built yet. And then sure enough, we show up, and my brother and I are the only white kids in the whole project. And so I took a few beat downs and gave a few growing up. And so
and how was it, again, knowing that now you guys are in a predominantly black neighborhood? How was that, you know, being able to grow up in that scene, and what did that do for you in terms of building relationships and just, you know,
Exactly. Well, those years, although part of you looks back and goes, wow, those are really challenging, but Fav, he knows my story, so it really molded me into who I was. There's a couple things that happened during that time of my life. I'll never forget, we were at the grocery store, and my brother, we're checking out. My brother looks at me and he goes, oh my gosh, you know, he didn't want my mom to hear. And I looked at him, I said, what? I'm only like 8, 9 years old. He goes, do you know what those are? And I was like, no. And he goes, those are food stamps. And I was like, what are those? He goes, that means we're broke. And I said, he goes, that means the government's buying us groceries. And I was like, wow, that really hit me, because I knew we didn't have much money, but I didn't know, like, we were on government help or whatever. And that always kind of just stuck with me when I felt like quitting in life and quitting at SC as a red shirt and getting beat up in the NFL and even at work, you know. I mean, that's always just stuck in my mind. And then I remember when we moved to Houston and we showed up. My mom signed a 2-year lease, and we showed up there. It was big, nice, pretty, brand new apartments, and we were just the only white people out of probably 500 people in the apartment complexes. Yeah. And you know, given that we didn't look like everybody else, you know, we got beat up a lot, lunch money gone. It's a funny story now, but at the time it wasn't. We kept getting our lunch money taken from us, so we started going to the principal's office because they would give us meal tickets, because my mom was like, they can't even eat at school. And then we started getting beat up because everyone thought we were like ratting everybody out. We were only in there to get our lunch ticket, and then, you know, everybody thought, oh man, they must be trying to rat us out. So then we kept getting beat up for, so I mean, we couldn't win for trying. But all those you know, situations in my life that I look back on, I kind of go, man, you know, look, I grew up dirt poor, but I'm a millionaire now, and it wasn't from NFL days. But it's just, that stuff just really taught me, you know, to keep on keeping on, and the challenges that face you got to overcome them somehow. And like I said, I got beat up, and I'll tell you this, I remember when I got to USC, I was the only white DB in the room, and we had a lot of 5-star athletes everywhere. And, you know, hey man, I'd had my nose kicked in those apartments in Houston, and I competed. And by the way, you know, I've got a bunch of birthday party photos. Once again, I'm the only white kid in the photo. These are all my boys. So it allowed me to integrate socially in a positive way with all types of ethnicities and stuff like that. So when I got to SC, it wasn't that big of a deal for me to adapt, and you know how that is when you're in a sports environment, and people people want to push people's buttons and see how tough you are and all that stuff, and those days made me tough. And
so high school was in Houston.
No, actually, high school was in Arizona.
In Arizona,
but
okay.
Junior, like grade school, junior high, those real shaping year 8 through like 12 years old was in Houston. Okay. I was taking some lumps.
So once you got to Arizona, got into sports, and then how did that kind of change, you know, things? Once you're like, you know what, I'm actually pretty good at this football thing. Yeah. I think I probably should stick this out and keep going to see where it takes me, right? So how did you know, like, man, you know what, I can go somewhere with this?
Well, it's interesting because when I was in Houston, I was playing kind of like our earlier discussion off camera about Carson Banning. This area of Houston is, shoots out a lot of pro athletes and stuff. So me competing against those guys at such a young age, when I went out to this little, desert town, Phoenix, and, Lily White, I'm like, man, this is like taking candy from a baby after what I just came up. Yeah. And so I was a pretty big, tall, athletic, kid, and I kind of had my way, and it's just, I played football, basketball, and baseball, tried to run track, but the coaches wouldn't let me. But just like I said, things got real easy for me once I got out of Houston, because I was like, wow, this isn't like and then kind of the legend where I grew, they retired my number.
Okay.
I'm the only, whatever. And so on my little part of Northwest Phoenix, I'm a big deal, but I came out to SC. It was
what was the recruiting process like? Now you're going through this recruiting thing, and they're like, hey, you're pretty good, and all these colleges want you. What was that process like? Now, again, the reason why I asked that is because now it just gotten out of hand. I mean, it's a spectacle on ESPN. You got the hats and stuff and that whole thing. So what was it like for you knowing that, man, they're going to pay for my education? I get to go anywhere I want in the country, and all these schools want me, and SC want. I get to go back to California where I originally started this journey, right? So what was that like?
It was, I'll tell you, it was one of the most exciting times of my life. Getting recruited. I remember getting those first few offers, they rolling in, and then the big ones. And then it's funny, you got, once SC rolls in, everybody rolls in. And on top of it, I was getting recruited for just baseball only. So I was getting baseball scholarships, and then at the same time, Major League Baseball, the Phillies threw a lot of money at me, so I was getting hit from all these different angles. Even after I signed my letter of intent with SC, then the major league teams are trying to pre-negotiate before the draft with me. So it was a blur. It was super exciting. I'm getting chills telling the stories because it was an amazing experience. And my high school was pretty known for baseball, but football, we hadn't had too many guys get any D1 offers. And matter of fact, a little side note, I'll never forget my freshman year, they told me I was going to start and the whole thing, and all of us were red shirts. And I thought about quitting and all these, things, but I'll never forget my high school coach. He says, man, I'd hate to see you leave SC. He goes, we've never had a kid out of this school in 50 years go to a big powerhouse like that. And that motivated me. And that spring, after that conversation with him over Christmas break, I ended up, Mark Carrier went in the draft as a junior, and Howard McCowan from, I think, Carson, and Banning. Me and him were listed as the co-stars at the end of camp. But just a lot of hard-hitting spring ball and fighting and kicking and scratching and just, keep on keeping on. And next thing you know, I was a 4-year starter. And as a white DB, man, that's a dinosaur.
In the 90s, right? Early 90s or late 80s?
90 through 93.
Wow. And that's a remarkable feat. Why SC?
Well, ironically,
it was Pac-10 at the time, ladies and gentlemen. So
I actually wanted to go to Notre Dame and UCLA, the biggest rivals, but because SC wasn't recruiting me at the time. But both schools didn't want two-sport athletes; they wanted one or the other. And I'll never forget, Chuck Stobart, USC's assistant head coach, walked in and he said, and I said, "Well, I look, SC's great, but I'm really going to play both sports in college." And he goes, "Great, we got Rodney Peete, John Jackson, Jack Del Rio," and he threw out all these massive names, and I'm like, holy cow, I can play both there. And so it was an easy decision.
Matter of fact, side note, I don't know if Big Mike knows, but John Jackson, commentator John Jackson, right, with Fox Sports, right? I think I heard recently, I don't know if the news is, they recently had, I believe, a stroke or
massive stroke.
So prayers out to John Jackson, as well as Lil John, again, same age as my son. Great family, great guy, and was definitely there for my son going through the recruiting process, and we'll keep you in our prayers as well, Big John. So going back, so we're at SC now, 4-year starter. After going through that whole deal, your redshirt freshman year, you start to play. You play in the biggest game, UCLA, USC. How was SC? How was SC? The whole college experience.
It was amazing.
Especially in the '90s.
No, it was amazing. I'll never forget. I was starting at corner, and Notre Dame was coming to town, and they had a guy, leading candidate for the Heisman, Rocket Ishmael. And I remember telling my coach, "Hey, coach, man, whatever happens, don't let me cover this guy man to man." I'm back then I was a little thinner. I was a 4.4 guy, but he was a 4.1 guy. And I'll never forget, we're playing Notre Dame, got 107,000. That was back when the Coliseum was maxed out, and we were playing zone most of the game, and then we ended up checking into some deal, and next thing you know, I got Rocket man. My cushion was supposed to be 7. I'm back at like 11. I'm like running the other way because my coach said, "Don't get beat." But no, the experience that was a little bit of a culture shock because, like I said, I didn't grow up with a lot of money or anything like that. And I'll never forget, I had this beat up old pickup truck that I drove to SC, and I had this one girl my freshman year, beautiful gal, says, hey, why don't we, go to dinner or whatever, or maybe I said it, and then she said, okay, I take her to my pickup truck, and she goes, why don't I drive? Because I didn't even realize I hadn't even washed my car. I hadn't even been in my car since training camp started. So this is like a month later, and I got black film all over the car, and the next thing I know, she pulls up. She's got a 600 SL Mercedes. Her car is worth more than the house I grew up in. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Let's go in your car.
We'll take your car. And I'm thinking, man, my dad can't afford this. But it was a culture shock. But once again, it was a melting pot. Yeah. I mean, a lot of athletes came from my similar background, who I hung out with all day, and millionaire families all over the place. It was cool. I loved it.
So before we leave SC, obviously you go on to the NFL and then go through, in a way, another type of recruiting process of being drafted and that whole kind of thing. Before that, obviously, I always go back to this because I'm big on this as a person as well as a father in terms of building relationships, right? You would know through football and especially in business how this becomes very, very instrumental in people's success. Unfortunately, from an athletic point of view, a lot of the times the kids aren't being taught this. You signed a Division I scholarship, you're put through this system. They're not telling you, hey, on the weekend, make sure if you play for Oregon, try to go hunt down Phil Knight and see if you can get an internship. No one is teaching these athletes that. So you go through a 3-4 year process, 7 days a week, this rigorous training. You're so tired, you're like, bro, I don't want to do no internship. I don't want to call Mike. I know he's an SC alumni. You don't want to do none of that. So knowing that you went through that, how instrumental were all the relationships that you have built from all these different ethnic groups, from different backgrounds, different social classes? How instrumental was the SC relationships for you going forward?
Yeah, well, this is a good man because even today, Travis Davis and I were talking about this off camera. So many kids get used by the system and they don't use the system back. Yeah. And you got a lot going on, but I love mentoring people and hearing my story because you're there. You need to meet all the kids on campus. You need to meet people, and you need to find out what their dad. My biggest question back in the day was, what does your dad do for a living? What does your mom do for a living? Just because people always say, "What's your major?" And I'm like, I tell them my major, but what do you want to do? I never knew. I hated that question. It was like, I'm a freshman, man. I'm trying to get through geology. I don't know what I want to do. Don't ask me that question. But it's so important in finding out what's out there, and I don't think schools do a good enough job of explaining all the different sub-markets of the business world. And hey, this is the financial sector. Here's the biomeds. Yeah. Here's the this, and this. And so it's very important. But I got into commercial real estate actually during the LA riots. They canceled finals at USC, and everybody was leaving town. And a gentleman, John Allred, the Allred family, we all went down to their house in Del Mar. They had this $5 million mansion on the beach. And so I was sitting there, having a beer with the old man. And I said, so what did you do? And he says, I got into commercial real estate, then I got into development. I said, what is commercial real estate? I don't even know what it is. And he started telling me about office, all the different sectors of office, industrial, retail, medical, and then he said he was a broker, which is what I do now. And then he eventually got into, being a land developer. Now, I remember taking the bus when we played the Chargers into San Diego Qualcomm Stadium back in the day, and it would say Doug Allred Corporate. I mean, his name was on every headstone down there. And although I've never evolved into his status, the brokerage world's been great for me. I'm making a good, comfortable living, and I'm hitting singles and doubles. I'm not hitting those home runs, but I don't have the stress that a lot of the developers have. And I'm not going to go bang or bust, and I'm a hustler. So that's my deal.
So after SC, we go on to the league, right? Obviously, it's probably like a little bit later 90s or whatnot. What was the league like? What was going through the draft process? And obviously that's a whole other culture shock there, because now you're playing at the elite of the elite, right? Yes, you have great talent at SC and UCLA and all the Pac-10 schools, but now this is the cream of the crop, right? So you hear about these guys, first rounders and everything. What was it like there now?
Well, this is going to surprise everybody I tell this story to. It kind of blows their mind, but keep in mind when I got picked up by the 49ers, they had Jerry Rice, J.J. Stokes, Terrell Owens, John Taylor, Super Bowl I think MVP. So they had all these big, tall receivers, but none of them were the burners that I saw at USC. When I was at SC, all those guys were 4.5 and up. And when I was at SC, man, I had Curtis Conway running a 4.1. I had Travis Hanna running a 4.1. I had Gary Wellman running a 4.3. I mean, I had some burners at SC. So man-to-man coverage, which is the hardest thing for me back because I was a corner safety. So I actually built a lot of confidence because when I got there and we go to man-to-man, I could press any of those guys. I remember I loved covering Terrell Owens back in the day. I was a big guy. I could get in his grill and slow him down, and he wasn't going to run away from me. So my confidence built when I got to the NFL because of the receivers that I had to cover every day. They're great receivers, great possession, timing receivers, and there's no bash on them. It's just I saw so much speed at USC. That was going from my high school team to USC was that was the biggest gap I ever saw in my life. And then when I went from SC to the Niners, wasn't that big of a jump. And people, that blows people away. And even NFL guys say, no, that can't be true. That was my experience. Granted, then you have to get used to Garrison Hurst and his burst. I never saw any tailbacks like that. And there were some linemen that were gigantic. But no, it was a great experience, and it was interesting. I used to like to go have beers with all my buddies and back in college and probably partied a little bit too much. But man, when you got to that high atmosphere, those days were gone, man. Guys were asking me to go out and have beers with them. I'm like, hey man, when the season's over, give me a call. But I needed to be on my A game. And so, it was an amazing experience playing with legends of the game. The amount of Hall of Famers I played with in just those, 4 years I really played was amazing.
Wow. I think Mike is pretty humble about this. Having played the game, for Mike to have played corner, okay, they say this to this day that Deion, obviously one of the best corners ever played, is that the cornerback position is the most athletic position on the field. Because mind you, from my athletic standpoint, I have to backpedal as fast as you run forward. Okay, not only that, I got to be able to break out, stay on the hip, and actually defend. So that position is very, 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 very difficult to actually play. Another thing is this, and Mike is going to be humble about this. He's probably gotten the tag having gone from where he was at in Arizona to SC to play corner. That's a badass white boy. And once you get that tag, okay, from all the other ethnic groups, you know that this guy can go, okay? So I'm sure he's being humble about that, right? But I'm sure over the years, he's like, hey, the dude could go. So don't think you're just going to line up on Mike and do whatever you're going to do. So I wanted to kind of point that out, especially for people that aren't really, understand athletics and football and whatnot. There's all this, there's another game in the culture that doesn't get expressed, mainly because, again, it's more of the locker room kind of, between football players and the football community. But I know that for a fact. So that's one thing that I wanted to point out. So now that we're in the league, you play your 4 years, you do your thing, you're looking like you're coming back to the tail end of it. I know you're thinking like, look, I met the commercial real estate guy. This looks like this NFL thing is going to come to an end soon. Mm-hmm. When did you start to like, man, I got to start making this move, like this transition? Was there anything in the league that, hey, what do you do? Yeah. What do you do on the off season? Oh shit, I'm going to do this. Like, whoa, was there anything that you got yourself into before it was all over?
Well, I got a funny story about what you're asking because so that John Allred's dad, Doug Allred, was the guy I told you kind of got me in commercial real estate. But I'll never forget, I started interviewing for firms like in the off season. Okay. And I'll never forget, I got a little internship at a place up in Northern California. I think it was at CBRE Commercial Real Estate. But it was funny. I come walking in the locker room one day during the off season. I'm going in for an informal workout. I think we just had to get in 4 or 5 lifts a week or something. So I go in there and I'm taking off my coat and tie. And I'm trying to remember who it was. It might have been T.O. It might have been Terrell Owens. But they're like, they said, hey, Mike, why are you all dressed up? I said, oh, well, I'm working at this commercial real estate company. And everybody's like, hey, man, how much they paying you? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm just, it's more, they're helping me out. I don't create any value for them. So I'm only making like $12, $10 an hour. And they're all like, and they were all laughing at me. But the funny part about it was I was smart. I was, I checked my ego at the door, which my dad always told me, when you walk into Newton, just check your ego at the door. But I was making $10 an hour, and I was just learning the ropes, understanding what's going on, getting my lay of the land. I was just glad I was even getting a check. I thought they weren't even going to pay me because I didn't bring any value. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a license. So I worked at CBRE, and then that opened up doors when my career ended and I moved down to Orange County. People have said, "Oh, okay, so you've already worked somewhere." So now they were like, "Okay, you're kind of already in the system a little bit."
But let's take it a step back if you don't mind me doing this, Mike. You're in the league, and as you know, guys, off season, hey, I just played 17, 18 games. I'm not gonna go and do no What clicked in your mind, unlike other athletes that said, "Hey, we play from this month to this month. We're not going to the Super Bowl or whatnot. I know from January to whatever time OTA start that I got to do something to plant the seed for later." Why did you make that decision versus all, you get what I'm saying, all these other guys? And what made you say, man, I got another plan, in my off months? What was that?
I think in life it's survival. I think that story I talked about, mom and food stamps, that stuff just, it's just, it's survival. It's hunting, gathering. From the beginning of time. You've always got to be thinking ahead. What's going to happen, and whether it's a football game or a baseball game, what's about to come down the road? What do I need to do to get better for today's game or next week's game? And I was, although the NFL was an absolute bear to stay in and compete, I was always thinking, what's next for me? What's next for me? And I do that in business too. What's next? I mean, last year I had a huge year, and my wife's like, "Mike, let's go take a vacation." And I said, for a month and get away. And I said, "Honey, no, what's next? Hey, let's, so we go have a nice little vacation." And now I'm after it again. And so something in my brain it's always what's next? What's next? It's you can't live on. I always say, don't live on yesterday's paycheck. And I see a lot of guys that I played with that made a lot of money. And if one thing, I'll say this, and I taught my kids this a couple weeks ago, there's reoccurring income and non-reoccurring income. And what athletes, I don't think understand is that when you get paid a paycheck in the NFL or whatever it is, that you're not going to, you know that when you're 65 years old, you won't be playing that sport. So I consider that non-reoccurring income. And in life, you want to get to reoccurring income that's going to happen all the time. So there's non-reoccurring and reoccurring. And I'm a commission guy, so nobody's going to just keep, my paycheck doesn't keep coming in. So you got to be looking ahead, especially if you're on that non-reoccurring side, and try to make sure that whatever you're doing in life, you're living on tomorrow's paycheck, not yesterday's. That's how you build wealth.
So you're in the league locker rooms. You already have a game plan for after. How much was wealth, the financial literacy, wealth, assets, stocks, businesses? How much of that was actually discussed in these locker rooms? You brought up T.O. Unfortunately, everybody's seen what has happened to him after, right? So obviously it's no puzzle, right? Because having played with him, you're like, oh yeah, I just finished telling him I'm getting paid $10 an hour. He's over here laughing at me, right? Well, who has the last laugh now? You know what I mean? So how much of that was actually discussed?
Well, it's interesting. You're talking another great point. When I played for the Niners, there was this group that would go sit in the weight room at lunch, and everybody needed a quick sandwich and get going. I'll never forget. It was Steve Young, Harris Barton. I think Jerry Rice was in it. There was a whole handful of guys. What I find interesting is we would talk about stocks and talk about which ones are performing and price to earning ratio and all this kind of stuff. And I would just kind of sit there like a fly on the wall. But anybody could have joined them in the weight room, but nobody did. But here's the crazy part. All of those guys that I just mentioned are all part of these private equity firms up in NorCal. And these guys made way more money outside of football joining these because they followed companies and they like I said, once again, they're thinking about the next part of their life. They're always looking ahead. But it's really strange. There was a guy named Mark Harrison, a wide receiver. He didn't make much money, but the guys, and then Tommy Vardell, touchdown. Tommy Vardell was in that group. And Brent Jones, the all-pro tight end. But it's amazing, all those guys I've heard, they were some of the original guys in Yahoo, some of the original guys in Google. And I was talking to some of my friends who lived up there. I'm like, man, I should have just stayed up there. Like, my whole group, those guys are all probably worth a couple $100 million. Now I think they got lucky and they used their status in the right area at the right time. But your point's well taken, is that, like, you gotta pay attention. And yeah, most of the other guys, they were just sitting there, doing whatever. Nobody was talking about any of that kind of stuff. And a lot of guys, in that locker room, I see them at these reunions, man. They got guys that sign $1 million contracts, and I saw one guy that I backed up. I'm not gonna name names. I think he's a first or second round pick, signed for a lot of money. And man, we showed up at a reunion. The guy had holes in his sweater and everything, and he had these Velcro shoes. And I mean, you could just tell the guy had lost. He spent every penny he had. And we had some other guys. One more thing about this is, there's real property and there's personal property. Real property appreciates, it's real estate. And I'll never forget Ken Norton, and I'm not going to say the name of the other guy, but it was one of the funniest conversations. We were all sitting there stretching one day, and Ken Norton is one of the funniest human beings I've ever played with in my life. And we had this linebacker, and they all had dinner over at his house the night before. And this guy made a lot of money, but he didn't make, whatever. And he went over there. And this guy, he said his name, and he was doing this in front of the whole team, but he was kind of, many of truth is said in jest, and he was basically like, he couldn't believe, because Ken Norton was a humble guy, drove a Jeep Grand Cherokee, this guy was making millions, and he just drove this little, Jeep, and he just saved all his money, and he was, very smart with his money. But we had this other guy, we went over, he was giving him grief, because the guy had a, grand piano, he had all this jewelry, and he walked in, he had the grandfather clock, he had the big marble table, he had all this crazy fancy stuff. He pulled up, he had a Hummer, a Porsche, and then at the very end of that, he named off everything he saw that night when he had dinner at his house, and he goes, and you live in an apartment. And he goes, and he said, I know you know what personal property is, but do you own any real property? Wow. And I mean, that guy's broke too. And he was trying to get his point across, like everybody, like, guys, don't be idiots. Don't be blowing your money on cars and stuff that the minute you buy it, it's now worth half. And he was asking him, hey, spend your money on smart things, and I don't think the point got across.
Again, before we leave that point and move on, it's a great point that I want to go back to, of this group meeting in the locker room. You said, right? We should write a book about that. The locker room, the Niner locker room.
The weight room.
The weight room bunch or something like that, right? And he mentioned Steve Young. Now, obviously, everybody knows Steve Young, Hall of Famer. Does he really need to be in that room because of the money? But for him to actually be in it, that just goes to show that the 7th round guy should be in this room figuring this thing out, right? So, again, to all the athletes out there, it's a great point. I'm glad Big Mike was able to share that story. So now, fast forward, done with the league, we get into commercial real estate. Now we're 20 years into the game, 25 years now. And what has been your experience? What have you learned within commercial real estate? How has it boomed here in Orange County? Obviously, some of the most expensive real estate is here in Orange County. I'm sure you know the Donald Brent guy. I stayed at one of his Irvine companies.
He was there last night. Pelican Hill.
And so, again, the dude, the way he runs this thing is just phenomenal. Again, pretty much owns all of Irvine or whatnot. So what has been your experience with commercial real estate, the different levels of it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I mean, some things that pop into mind is, I try to be as presentable as I can. Today is actually Friday. I'm not even, but typically I'm in a dress shirt, a jacket and pants. But being presentable and being a man of your word. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Be on time, be early, be attentive, be as personable as you can. Over the years, just those and working my butt off, just like I did on the football field, it's paid dividends. I mean, to me, hard work always pays off. I mean, if you're unless you're just your game plan's all screwed up, it always pays off. But it's been an incredible ride. I do a lot of office leasing. I got Broker of the Year last year in Orange County. at Pelican Hill. Don Brenn's place, his company honored me, and it's been great. I mean, I handle mainly office leasing. Last year I did a whole bunch of building sales. I'm just truthful and honest with people. And what I find is, my brother always gives me grief because he hears I'm doing real well and making money. He said, "Oh, you're a great salesman." I said, "No, Tim, that's what you don't understand about what I do. Yeah. I don't sell anybody. People, I don't BS anybody." And so people, they see that about me and they go, "Look, everybody's nervous. Am I going to pay too much for this? Am I going to pay? Is this guy? Is he worried about his commission?" But what I think I have a very disarming personality. I basically tell people, "Hey, look, this is what I buy. I'll make more money if you buy that property, but this property is probably smarter." And when you do that, and you're a client, you build a client for life. I see guys in my office and they oversell things, and I can tell they're really trying to steer them to that one because they're going to make more money on that one. But people aren't dumb; they figure that stuff out. Yeah. And what I like about it is people in my office, everyone laughs. They go, "Mike, what's your marketing plan? Like, what do you?" And I'm like, "I'm referral." Mike, yeah. And they go, "How are you referral?" And I'm like, "I'm just referral." And they go, "That doesn't make any sense. You're not emailing. You're not calling." I don't cold call anybody. But what it is I take care of Fob. Fob realizes he trusts me. I trust him. And at the end, he realizes, man, I can trust this guy. Yeah. And trust is huge in business. Yeah. And then Fob turns around and refers me this guy, and this guy refers me that guy. And so to me, I don't sell anything. I'm like the taxi cab driver. I say, there's that one. I'd probably do that one. And people learn that they can trust what you tell them. And I just got a call yesterday from a guy up in San Francisco, and he's got a 20,000 foot building, probably a mile from here. And he says, "Hey, I need to sublease this." And I said, "Hey, if you don't mind me, can I ask you, how'd you hear my name?" He goes, "I actually heard your name from 3 different people." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "I live up in San Francisco. I own a company down there." And he goes, "But I've had 3 different people tell me you're the guy to talk to." And he goes, "So tell me about you, because I've heard your name from 3 different people." And the reason they've heard my name isn't from football. I'm a good car salesman or anything like that. I'm truthful with people. And I think when you're truthful with people, they realize they can trust you. And then they go, "Hey man, this is the guy to work with. This is who you want to work with, because you can trust this guy."
So, hey, we want to thank Mike as we conclude this thing. He did harp on one major factor, is just being able to trust, right? Mm-hmm. Carrying yourself with integrity, with character, because that's the long play. And unfortunately, this day and age, with our kids living on the internet and the trolling thing and just kind of having these crazy moments to be popular, I always tell my son, and I'm sure as Mike is a father as well, is that great character, great integrity, and respecting people and being able to spread love, those are the characteristics that last a lifetime, right? They're not popular or whatnot, but those are the characteristics that could build business relationships, in which a guy from San Francisco say, "Hey, you're the guy that I need to talk to." Right. 3 other people have referred. So last but not least, you probably already shared with it, but we want to ask again to reiterate 2 to 3 secret business hustle codes directly from Big Mike Salmon. What were 2 to 3 hustle codes that you abided by from day one all the way up until now, or even learned along the way, that you could share with the listeners and with the viewers, that they could take and say, "Man, you know what? I could do that because Mike did it. I was on food stamps because Mike was as well. I could go into commercial real estate because Mike did it as well." What were 2 to 3 hustle codes that you could share with them?
Yeah, I mean, do what you say. If you say you're going to do something, do it. That's simple, right? Be trustworthy. People can see through the BS. Typically when people are telling lies, everyone knows it. So just be truthful, be honest. People respect that. Work your butt off, man. Work your butt off. Play hard, work hard. That's my deal. I like to go out with my buddies and have a lot of fun. And then when it's work, man, let's go. I mean, a lot of my friends know, hey man, during business hours, it's, I don't really fool around much with a lot of different things. I'm out trying to, do what I say I was going to do. I got a lot of different clients right now. I'm thinking about 3 other people that I haven't gotten back to, and I'm going to go jump on those calls right now. A lot of them are painful. I don't like telling guys bad news that this building hasn't leased and blah blah blah, but you got to do it. And so I would say those are some of my some of my methods to my
And
madness.
if they wanted to get in contact with you, can you share with you, any of the commercial, the actual business on the commercial real estate side, as well as the lab stuff that you're actually doing?
Yeah, well, my cell phone's 949-689-8546. Call me anytime. And yeah, I do office, industrial, retail leasing. Obviously, here at Earth Labs, we do California compliance testing for legal grows, distributors, manufacturers, and those are my two. They got me staying up day and night.
Good. Well, again, want to thank Big Mike for his time. Definitely tune in next week for our next Hustle Code podcast. Follow us on YouTube and all the different platforms. And we'd like to leave you with our tagline: the codes are free, but the hustle's sold separately. Peace. Mike. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, you got it, man. That was cool. That was fun.